Hello, everyone. It's Schwab from iQuasar LLC. You're tuned in to our webinar hosted by iQuasar LLC in collaboration with Streamline Government Contracts. And the theme of our discussion today is going to be successful government contract management. So a brief overview of the key discussion points that I'll be discussing with our expert here. I have with me on the call Karen Long from Streamline Government Contracts LLC. She'll be briefly introducing herself and her company as well. But here's a brief overview of what we'll be discussing. First of all, navigating pre-award challenges, ensuring accuracy in contract execution, effective cost management strategies, and then subcontracts and contract reporting. Basically, all of the essentials of successful contract management. A bit about our company, iQuasar. We're based in Sterling, Virginia, and we provide a range of services for government contractors, especially small and medium businesses, which include proposal development, cleared recruitment, government contracting consulting, and GSA schedule consulting. To the left, you can see our website, email address, and phone number. And I have with me on the call, as I said, Karen Long, the president and founder of Streamline Government Contracts. So welcome, Karen. Thanks for being today with us here. Do you want to go over the details about Streamline?
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you for having me. And thanks for the audience listening today. So Streamline Government Contracts provides comprehensive contract management services. Some of these include teaming agreements, negotiation, subcontract negotiation, tracking and supporting reporting requirements, and being the point of contact for both the government and for your teaming partners. So you have somebody talking in contract language. And to the left is Streamline's website and my contact email and phone number. And Streamline is going on year 12 now. We've been in business since 2012. So again, a little bit about Streamline. And again, thank you for joining.
All right. So a bit about the context of the webinar. Basically, it started as a collaborative interview style blog that we did with Karen Long. And here's the link to the blog if you want to read the entire thing. So let's get started. So thanks again, Karen, for joining us today. My first question is about pre-award contract management. As you know, that mostly involves various types of agreements, such as NDAs and teaming agreements. Being very conscious of what's included in the teaming agreement, the language and everything, and everyone needs to be careful with what's included in TAs and NDAs. So can you share some common pitfalls that a lot of companies often get wrong or don't know how to navigate them? So what are some of the things that they need to keep in mind?
Sure. So I'm going to assume that the NDA is mutual, which of course it should be. And really the more challenging area is negotiating a teaming agreement from the subcontractor's perspective. So that's what I'm going to focus on. What I've seen is some subcontractors do not read the agreement in its entirety. So you want to check for contradictory language throughout the agreement. So for example, in Exhibit A, it might have a certain work share. However, earlier in the agreement, it might contradict it with saying things like, Prime will make its best effort, and basically negating what is in attachment or Exhibit A. So that's one thing. I'll go down a few other examples that we run into on a regular basis. Another thing that we try to mitigate is that the prime contractors sometimes want to renegotiate price after the award. So what I like to do is to include language such as the labor rates approved by the prime contractor prior to proposal submission shall be incorporated into the subcontract unless mutually agreed in writing by both parties. And that is very telling. If the prime contractor doesn't agree to that, then you know that they are going to most likely want to negotiate after award. So part of it is seeing what the prime agrees to, and understanding and having a backup strategy if they don't want to agree to it, or kind of getting a view of what their strategy may be. Also, the subcontractor often wants the prime contractor to provide 49% of the work share, but it's important to understand how this is going to be measured. Is it going to be measured by revenue, full-time employees, or hours? If there's so many positions, we all know that not all positions are equally profitable and or generate the same amount of revenue. Obviously lower labor categories are not going to generate as much profitability, and generally not going to be as profitable as well. And I will just give one more example here. What I also suggest is, instead of having work share be 49% of the revenue, I hear that a lot. Well, number one, it's almost never going to be exactly 49 to 51%. The other thing is that so what I like to do, or what I like to suggest, is that they that again, as a subcontractor, you say a minimum of 45% with a target of 49%, because again, 99% of the time you're not going to hit that 51% exactly. So you want to kind of have you want to know what the bottom ladder is, or the bottom platform. So that's what I would suggest.
Perfect. That makes sense. And once we move on into the execution part, and that brings us to the next question. So what are some steps for better contract execution that government contractors can adopt? So what can they do to ensure, and what steps do you recommend contractors to take once they've been awarded a contract and they need to set up the team for execution? So could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, so many people are in a rush to sign the contract as soon as possible. I know that contracting officers many times will ask for it by the end of the day, etc. But it is important to review it carefully, because it's a lot easier to get it right the first time than to have to go back and ask the contracting officer for modifications. A few other things is the contracts department should complete a contracts brief. I will say that at Streamline, we are pretty comprehensive in our contract briefs. We make it about the whole team. That's Streamline's philosophy. It's not just about contracts. It's not just about accounting or the technical team, but it's about the entire team: HR, recruiting, again, the contracts technical team, HR, etc. And of course, accounting. So that's, and then to have a kickoff and to go over the important things that each group or each department need to know about. So hold off an internal kickoff to go over these things. Participate in the government kickoff. And what I like to suggest to the team is to ask the contracting officer and or COR, contracting officer representative, at the kickoff what it's going to take to get an exceptional rating on the CPARs, and then make note of that. And then what I also suggest is doing a monthly report and sending it to the entire team so that everybody is on the same page and with what is going on in the contract, what is coming up, etc. It's in writing. Everybody is working off the same information. So that's really what I feel is one of the important keys, is for the departments not to be working in a silo, but for them to be working as one team and operating off the same information.
Correct. And that's really the most important part, like keeping the entire contract team on the same page. And as you said, getting expectations straight right at the onset of the contract, especially in the government kickoff. And that brings us to the next question. So managing costs within price restraints is the key to service contracts, as you know. So what strategies do you suggest for contractors so that they can better review and manage their costs throughout the life cycle of the contract and not get into overruns, for instance? So what are some of the things you want to speak to that?
So I recommend completing an estimate of completion for firm fixed price or time and material contracts, either quarterly or semi-annually, depending on the size of the contract. Obviously, the larger the contract, the more frequently the exercise should be performed. And for firm fixed price contracts, what I recommend is comparing a few things. First, comparing how much has been invoiced versus percentage of the project completed, and comparing the two. And then looking at and comparing the two. Also, it's important to look at what the indirect rates were bid at as compared to the current indirect rates. And then for T&M projects, the company should review things like the potential funding that will be used and the difference in profitability from the proposal. Looking at how much time is the employees are going to take off. So for example, if you're heading into the holidays or to the summer vacation, trying to get an accurate reading of the time that employees are going to be off, so you can try to utilize as many hours as possible, but yet not exceeding them.
That makes sense. Periodic estimations are the key, and also, as you talked about, the nuances and the differences in how to better cost manage FFP and T&M contracts. So that makes sense. Our next question is on subcontracts and negotiating them, because it can be a really big deal for small businesses, especially new ones. So reviewing and negotiating subcontracts, what strategies do you suggest for doing that effectively to ensure that the subcontractor gets the best possible and most favorable terms for themselves and not actually run into losses later on? So could you speak to that a bit?
Sure. So what I think is above getting input from all of the necessary departments. And so it's not really just about the technical team or the contracts team. But for example, if there is, usually subcontracts will have an invoice due date. Is this reasonable for the accounting department? As silly as this sounds, I had an experience where there was a lot of friction between the company I worked for when I was an employee and the prime contractor, because they had committed to a due date for the invoices that they just would just not work. So every month the prime contractor was getting frustrated. So I would say that's one of the main things, is to, make it as easy as on both companies to have a good relationship. And that's not assuming things from the other departments. For example, if there are terms in terms of how long you have to fill a vacancy, get input from the HR recruiting department. Again, they're the subject matter experts in that area. they should be able to provide and should have the opportunity, frankly, to provide input into that. Um, Try to terminate a termination for convenience clause that will only terminate when the government terminates that portion of the contract, or termination of the contract, so that the prime cannot take it the prime cannot just decide to terminate the subcontract for no apparent reason. So those are a couple things: getting input from everyone, from all departments, going to the appropriate department for those terms in the portion of the subcontract, and then and making sure things are clearly stated. Again, the less friction, the less ambiguous, the better relationship the subcontractor is going to have with the prime.
Exactly. I mean, clarity is the key to good subcontracts. And similarly, for our next question, which is another important part of contract management, is basically reporting. And this could be manpower or service contract reporting, and both are important for compliance and also for tracking performance. So what do you think are some of the key elements of an effective contract reporting system, and how can companies ensure that they meet all the requirements? Because as you know, there are too many. So what are some of the things you do at Streamline, or some general best practices that you recommend?
Yeah, I don't know if I would agree that there are too many, because that's just part of the deal with, that's part of what you're signing up for if you're going to be in the government contracting world. But basically at Streamline, we do this in two ways. We put all the reporting requirements on the contracts brief, and then on the monthly, we also create a monthly executive report at the end of the month. And we include we do a look ahead of 30 to 45 days. And we mention that, what the upcoming reports are and when they're going to be due. Therefore, again, notifying the team and notifying a group of people. Obviously, one or two people should be accountable, but it never hurts to let the team know. So those are the couple ways that I would suggest tracking the reporting requirements.
That makes sense. And that brings us to the end of the discussion. We explored some key questions from basically pre-award to execution to post-award, as well as compliance and reporting. And Karen's insight definitely are really valuable for contractors looking to enhance their contract management practices. And these were some common challenges and best practices, but if companies could implement these, or start with these at least, they could achieve greater compliance, efficiency, and success. Once again, Karen, thank you so much for sharing your expertise, and I look forward to seeing how our viewers take this advice and manage their contracts better. And once again, a link to the blog if you want to read the entire details, or if you missed certain parts of the interview, you can go to the blog and read the entire thing there. And that's pretty much it. Karen, any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our viewers?
No, if we are happy to provide a complimentary half hour if people out there have contract questions that we could help them with. We really fully want to help small and medium-sized businesses be as successful as they can. So would love to talk with people.
Absolutely. Thanks once again, Karen, and thank you, viewers, for joining us today. See you again.